Good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and call order to our Planning Commission meeting on May 12, 2026. Mr. Commissioner Quell, if you can please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you.
Ms. Abdullah, if we can please get a roll call.
Commissioner Daly, Commissioner Lopez, Chair Sherrick, Commissioner Quayle, here. Vice Chair Ivan Garcia,
Present.
Commissioner Galande, Commissioner Pratt,
Here.
Commissioner Carloni, Commissioner Orlando Garcia.
All right, I'll be reading over the public comment for items listed and not listed on the agenda. I don't have any public comment list.
Hi, I'm sorry. I just want to clarify. Since we don't have quorum, we won't be able to discuss any of the action items.
So it would be items 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, so yeah, correction there. Since we don't have quorum tonight, we're gonna skip our agenda items and jump in right into the non-public hearing items.
And we don't know if two commissioners are going to join later. Brenda, what was the result of your phone call?
Yolandi apologizes, but she will not be attending tonight, and I was unable to get a hold of Commissioner Garcia.
Okay, so that means if you get to Carloni or Garcia. Okay, so we're not getting Ronica tonight. All right, I think we can proceed with items 4 and 5, which means for items number 1, 2, and 3, you guys are here for items 2 and 3. We have to continue those items. So do we need to take an official motion of the Planning Commission to continue those items since we don't have quorum, or how does that work?
We can continue the items. Since we don't have quorum, I don't know that we'd be able to vote on that. I don't think, since we don't have quorum, we won't be able to do any motions. So we're just going to do the two non-public, the hearing items.
So
Okay.
we're gonna jump the public comments, items 1, 2, and 3, and then jump to the non-public hearing items.
4 and
item
5.
4 and 5. Okay, so we'll jump into the non-public hearing items. Item number 4 is discussion, the general plan update.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, it's definitely a pleasure to be here with you. And by the way, my name's Mark Hoffman. I'm the principal in charge of the general plan project. But it's definitely a pleasure to be here with you this evening. I know that you've been waiting for quite a long time for the general plan, as we have. And we're at the point now where we'd like to be able to present at least the highlights of the general plan and something that you can actually take a look at. You can use this PowerPoint to actually refer back to the general plan and look at different items, and it'll help you guide you through. But before I wanted to get started, I also wanted to recognize and extend gratitude to city staff, members of the GPAC, the many stakeholders and residents who also volunteered their time and contributed to this project. Let's see. Our agenda this evening is fivefold. First is an introduction. Second is background information on the 2050 general plan. The third will be the environmental clearance process, next steps, and finally questions and comments that you might have. So the general plan project, as you know, consists of actually 3 efforts that are related. The general plan update itself, the development code update, and finally the downtown specific plan. And this evening, we're just going to be focusing on the general plan document itself. These plans were actually updated for several key reasons. The 2005 general plan was actually quite outdated in terms of it was at least 20 years old. Quite a bit of recent legislation had passed. The local economy has changed, as well as the city's overall direction. Secondly, the development code also needed modernizing. With any type of general plan update, it's important to make sure that the development code is modernized so it actually implements the new general plan policy. In addition, the development code needed modernization just because of all the state legislation that's been passed. The housing legislation alone that's been passed is incredibly complicated and detailed. And so there were definitely some things that needed to be updated. And then finally, the city has long desired to spur economic development and growth in the downtown, centering on the Carousel Mall. That's why the downtown specific plan was crafted to achieve that objective. So what has been the process so far? We have, the whole process consists of about 6 different phases. The first phase is an existing conditions and trends analysis and report. That was completed in 2021. Then there was a vision statement, and the development of that occurred also in 2021 to 2022. The downtown specific plan followed. Most of the work was completed within about a 2-year time frame of 2022 to 2023, a little bit into 24. The general plan followed. Now we're currently working on the development code update and finishing that off, as well as going forward with public hearings, including public hearings eventually for adoption of the general plan. Now, the outreach process for the general plan has been extensive and long. It's been over 5 years in the making. And just to give you kind of a sense of the efforts that have been involved, there's been probably at least 50 or more meetings with the public venues where residents, stakeholders, GPAC members can talk formally and informally about the general plan, what their desires are for the future of the city, and how the general plan might assist in really realizing those desires for the future. For example, on the workshops on land use and vision, there was over 12 different meetings. Actually, there was 14 meetings, 2 meetings in each of the wards. There were special topic meetings that were conducted, at least a dozen, numerous workshops, pop-up events, and videos. One of the events you can see there in the sidebar of the PowerPoint. And there was also a community-wide vision survey that was conducted. Over 1,500 comments were pulled from that one vision survey. In addition to just broad-based community outreach, there's quite a bit of effort with the advisory committees. And the General Plan Advisory Committee held 14 different meetings over the course of several years, and they looked at all the documents and gave ideas and thoughts about each of the different elements and chapters of the general plan. There was a separate appointed Downtown Advisory Committee that held 8 different meetings, also looking at that document and what the aspirations were for the downtown, and how the specific plan could advance those aspirations. The housing element had its own special outreach that was held over several years, countless discussions and meetings with different stakeholders and groups in the city. And all of this is actually posted online at Future SB 2050. If you want to look at any of the results, any of the meetings, the agendas, it's all online. An important part of the general plan effort was really creating a new vision. And I like to think of it as a new vision for a new era. And, the question always comes up, why was it even drafted? Well, priorities change. It's now 2025, 2026. It's much different than when the general plan was the old general plan was being drafted, which is back in the early 2000s. Completely different time. And the thought with this vision is we wanted to make sure that it was relevant and it really reflected the desires of the community through 2050, and specifically post-COVID, post-bankruptcy, and post-redevelopment. Those are some of the key terms that really defined an earlier planning period, earlier types of constraints that you would have, and we're hoping that we have gotten past that and really turned the turn the page, and I'm looking forward to 2050. So what are some of the vision themes? Well, the vision is actually a very lengthy vision. It's in the document. I haven't repeated it all here, but I did want to just pull out a couple phrases because I think the phrases speak to the vision. One is the rich heritage. And as you look through the general plan, I'm hoping that you look, for example, in the cultural resources element, just how much the heritage is of the city. It is incredible, the history of 150 years or 200 years almost since the city's founding. Secondly was a spirit of collaboration. Third, a natural and the scenic beauty of the city, emphasized in the picture over there on the right, which I believe is the Belvedere neighborhood and the views above that. Equitable treatment of residents, businesses, and community groups. Diverse amenities, whether it's schools, public services, housing, or a healthy environment. Strong neighborhoods. A commitment to the advancement of education and skills of all residents so they can actually achieve the dream economically that they wish to. A robust and resilient economy, plenty of transportation choices, and finally, valuing the cultural and creative expressions of your residents and groups here in the city. So with that, I would like to turn to the next portion, which is the components of the general plan. And what I want to do is go through some of the elements or chapters of the general plan, give you kind of a sense of the structure. And I'm not going to go over every single piece of information. There's 400 pages to look at, but I did want to give you just a high-level overview of some of the things to look for. So the structure of the general plan has three kind of basic pieces. One is the introduction. It's only one chapter of the general plan, but it just sets out the public outreach process, the purpose of the project, vision, and other important information just to kind of get you grounded in what the general plan's all about. The second is the elements or the chapters of the general plan, and there are 12. There's a new environmental justice element, there's expanded elements for safety, expanded elements for open space, conservation, parks, and cultural resources, as well as other topics as well. And finally, there's an implementation plan. Nothing gets done without implementation, and the general plan includes, I put 225, I think it's closer to 250 programs for implementing the goals and policies of the general plan over the next 25 years. Now, the general plan is structured in there's two basic types. There's one, which are the mandated elements. These are the elements that are required to be included per state law. Land use and urban form, circulation and mobility, housing, which is under a separate cover, which was adopted back in 2024, open space conservation, public safety, and noise. Those are the mandated required elements. Now, there are a number of optional elements that are chapters that your general plan has, and the way state law is set up is that a city is free to choose optional elements for topics that are of importance to the city. And there are 6 of them: parks, recreation, and trails. There's a very thorough update of that chapter. Public facilities and services, economic development. There's a very significant update of the cultural resources chapter, utilities and infrastructure, and finally, health and environmental justice. There's actually an optional element. You can do it by integrating that element throughout the general plan, but in this case, it's a standalone chapter of the general plan. So let's talk about land use and urban form. Now, as you probably know, the land use element, it essentially establishes a plan for the type, the intensity or density, the location, and the quality of land uses in the city. And it includes at least these 5 components, which is the land use designations in the plan, which is residential, commercial, industrial, etc., and the plan itself or the map. It includes references to specific plans, overlays, and the map that's associated with that. It has a build-out for 2050, urban form, community design section, and then a special focused area section where there's 10 different focus areas with policies for each of those. Here's the map as has been drafted, and I'm sure you'll be getting very, very familiar with with this map and the new language and terminology for each of the districts. So some of the significant changes in the element. In the past, the general plan had numerous land use districts to the point that it actually was getting somewhat confusing and overlapping. And so an effort was made to consolidate the land use districts from 25 down to 12. This is a general plan, so we're trying to keep it general. We'll let the zoning do the work of the nitty-gritty and divvying up things into specific zones. But in terms of general land use classifications, it would be now 12. Before, you had the foundation component, then you had the general plan land use designations, and then the implemented zones. Now it's just going to be 12 consolidated land use districts. In addition, we added 3 new mixed-use districts, and we'll get into that and the reason for that. Third, we realigned the strategy and focus areas and reduced them to 10. Now, the focus areas and strategy areas, you used to have that in the old general plan, if you recall, but they were called something different. There was redevelopment project areas, there were corridor plans, there were different strategy areas. Now we've kind of combined that, taken some out, retooled them. It's now down to 10. Fourthly, we added high-level community design guidance. There's no longer a community design element. It's now integrated as part of the land use chapter. And then finally, there was also a focus on sustainable and resilient development. This is just a few. There's quite a bit more that's involved. And so when you look at all of this and you look at the project impacts, this is more of an EIR topic, but over the next 25 years, we could expect up to 36,000 new homes, 64,000 residents, and 61,000 or 60,500 jobs. And this is for the entire planning area. The city, the unincorporated areas, the islands, Muscoy, the whole area that comprises the city's incorporated area and its sphere of influence. Now getting to the nitty-gritty here on the land use designation changes. As I mentioned earlier, the general plan does consolidate residential land use districts. Now, the densities have been raised in some of the categories, and the reason why they've been raised is that there are quite a few non-conforming uses. And so what we tried to do is create categories that capture some of those non-conforming uses that allow people to continue to kind of reinvest and change and make changes to their property, but just kind of clean it up because many of the residential districts have changed significantly over time. In addition, what we did is we raised the densities for the medium and the high density classifications specifically for the housing element. Now, your housing element, the 7th cycle is going to be starting. It's going to be starting probably in about a year and a half. And so we're trying to set the stage now to kind of position yourself to be able to respond to the new housing numbers without having to go through and do a full rezone and change the general plan. So in terms of the categories that you'll have now, it's residential estate. There's been no change in anything for that. There'll be a residential low category. That now comprises 2 of the original residential low categories that you had. You'll have a residential suburban category where the densities are higher than what it was in the past. It's 7.2 now, dwelling units per acre versus 4.5. We combined the residential urban and medium density, and it's now just residential medium at 16 units per acre. And the residential medium high and high has been combined into just residential high. We set it at 32 dwelling units per acre because that is designed specifically for state law and specifically for the housing requirements. Now, you still have one zone out there that's a special zone for the housing element that will extend till probably 2027, and that's just at the very highest category at 55 units per acre and above. That will probably eventually be taken out, and you'll just have a residential high classification. Commercial districts, same story. You had quite a few commercial districts. It's now reduced to 3 commercial districts. A commercial neighborhood, which is small-time retail, grocery store, corner store types of arrangements, to commercial corridor. Much of your commercial area right now is along your long corridors, whether it's Highland, and you've got a lot of long, very long commercial corridors. We're changing the designation, so now it's commercial corridor. There were 5 commercial general densities and classifications. Now it's just 1. And then a regional commercial. There were 5 regional commercial districts. Now there will just be 1, but still have a tier of densities. Now, we did add housing to each of those commercial districts. The reason being is that it's because of change in state law, which requires cities to allow housing on commercial sites, along commercial corridors. But we kept the densities low, and purposely low, because we want to still incentivize commercial development along those areas, but we do have to allow for housing. So it's at 16 dwelling units per acre, and that's basically you're looking at townhomes, townhome developments. 3 new mixed-use districts were also added: a mixed-use neighborhood, mixed-use corridor, and a mixed-use center. And if you look back at the commercial districts, you have a commercial neighborhood, a commercial corridor, and regional commercial. So we have somewhat of a similar parallel arrangement just for the mixed uses. The densities also, standards are generally the same, whether you're in the commercial corridor or the mixed-use corridors. However, the main difference is that the densities are much higher. Mixed-use neighborhood goes up to 32 dwelling units per acre, up to 40 for mixed-use corridors, and 60 for mixed-use centers. And that's because you need the densities when you're going to have a mixed-use product to make it financially feasible and actually get the units built. So additional density for mixed uses, whether it's a vertical mixed use or whether it's a horizontal mixed use, in select areas of the city. And the areas are predominantly along 3 or 4 major corridors. That's kind of where the mixed use is designed to occur. And I guess it's fortuitous to some extent. One of the things that we wanted to use in the last housing element is we wanted to get credit for some of the mixed use projects and the interest in mixed use in the city, but we weren't able to do that because there was not a history. And here we already know now 3 or 4 products have been approved recently for small time mixed use. And so there may be a market that's developing for this. And finally, for industrial districts, the 5 industrial districts will be reduced to 3. There's an industrial flex district now, which is a combination of your industrial office park and your light industrial. Now it's just called industrial flex. It can go both ways. We have a general industrial district, which is largely unchanged, and an industrial extractive district for mineral production. It's completely changed as well. So really the only one that changed there was the industrial flex. And we added a little bit of FAR to include an incentive to put out offices that are attached to these industrial products. That's also good for sales tax as well if they happen to have a sales office. So moving on to circulation and mobility. As you know, the circulation element it's basically a plan for the safe and efficient movement of people and goods in a variety of different ways. And it typically includes the roadway system, the future roadway system, how vehicles circulate and the level of service. There's always there's a section on active transportation, public transit, goods movement, which is trucking, rail, air, and some additional specialized topics. And some of the significant changes to the element are it expands and prioritizes pedestrian infrastructure citywide to promote walkability. There's a definite, you'll see it, there's a definite prioritization of getting more people out there walking and being more active, much like what your project's doing. I believe you have one up on Highland right now, where you're looking at different types of options to get people active out there on the sidewalks and to make that street safe. Secondly, the circulation chapter, it expands the proposed bicycle route map by about 40 lane miles. Third, it updates transit policies for bus, air, and railways. And then finally, it focuses or refocuses truck routes in industrial areas in the southern portion of San Bernardino. And this is actually a very significant change. In your last general plan, trucking was allowed any place, and you could take a truck any place, residential streets included. There was obviously an extensive process to reduce the number of truck routes to those that are needed for industrial purposes and deliveries to commercial businesses, but limited to areas where where the trucks need to go, not necessarily everywhere in the city. The third chapter is economic development, and this is a plan for developing the local economy, equipping your workforce to be productive and competitive in the local economy, and generating revenues that can be reinvested into services for the community. And so typically we have policies to retain, attract, and expand business opportunities. There's also policies for activity centers, districts, and corridors. So when you think back to when I mentioned the mixed-use corridor or the mixed-use center or other types of districts, that's what this is for. Policies for improving economic security and workforce development, and also for the long-term fiscal health and resilience of the city. So what are the significant changes to the element? And you'll see in this graph, there's a map along the side. These are now the focus areas that we have economic development policies called for. And just to remember, doesn't mean that the city is not looking at all of its areas for economic development. These are the ones that are just included at this particular moment. And also, just to also backtrack, you have additional specific plans that also have economic development efforts that are not necessarily shown on this map. So it's not necessarily exclusive. But what this map does is it deletes all the old redevelopment project areas that were phased out in 2013 and converts them to focus areas. And it includes policy guidance for existing and emerging focus areas, such as the auto center. That wasn't really particularly a focus in the last general plan. It will be in this one. The greater downtown, Hospitality Lane, and many other areas of the city as well. And then also finally, we'll have some policies on fiscal resiliency and having a stronger economic development program. Public facilities and services is the next chapter. This was not changed as much. It's a plan for providing essential services that maintain and improve the quality of life. As you recall, it includes education and libraries, healthcare facilities, community fire, police services, and environmental programs. The key change really is really threefold. One is there are new policies on expanding and growing the local health professions and medical care sector. We do think, and we've noticed that there's been quite a bit of movement in the medical sector recently, and we'd like to see that continue. You've got several hospitals, you've got clinics coming in the community. There's a lot of growth that can be seen in that area. There are also updated policies on environmental programs, whether it's urban forestry, new mandates for waste management, code enforcement, and finally some new policies on capital improvement planning. Utilities and infrastructure is an element or chapter that you had in your last general plan. It's the city's long-term strategy for developing, operating, and maintaining utility infrastructure and services. And it typically includes, and this one does, wastewater, water resources, storm drain, energy resources, and telecommunications. Now, this is obviously a high-level document. You've got, the city has to prepare a number of master plans beneath the general plan that are driving policy and capital improvements. So this element is designed just to hit the top and provide an umbrella for those efforts. Some of the significant changes is that the former energy and water conservation element is pulled into this element now. It's no longer a separate element, and that's because energy and water conservation, it is now standard practice for utilities and infrastructure. It's no longer something different. It's either integrated or it's not even active. So we pulled it all together because it's just more in line with what's currently happening on the ground. We also have new policies and stronger ones for water resilience and energy resilience. One of the most interesting things that we discovered, at least in doing this general plan, is the policies and all the projects that are dealing with renewable energy generation, whether it's solar, fuel cell, methane, and other types of alternative energy sources in the city. It's actually happening. Now, the Parks and Recreation and Trails chapter, that was always a chapter of the general plan, and it's a long-term strategy for developing, operating, and managing your park and recreation facilities. It's not the same as the Park and Recreation Master Plan. This is a 25-year plan. The Park and Rec Master Plan is a 5-year plan that looks more at incremental developments to specific facilities. The general plan will have a section on parks and open space, park and facility design, recreational programs, and bicycle and multi-use trails. And some of the significant changes to this chapter include an equity analysis per recently passed Senate Bill 1425 that looks at the location and the accessibility of parks and recreational facilities by neighborhood. So you'll be able to go in there in that element, and you'll be able to look at maps and see how accessible parks and senior centers and community centers are for different neighborhoods. There's also more park facility guidance on expanding the number and size of park acreage in the community. We have a renewed section on recreational programs that's been expanded, and also very strong policies for developing and expanding the system of multi-use trails in the city. Next chapter is open space and conservation. This chapter outlines the city's long-term strategy for managing, protecting, and balancing the natural resources in the community. And this is probably one of the most significantly changed chapters of the general plan because of new legislation, SB 1425, AB 1889, and all the new environmental mandates that have come out. And this chapter looks at the natural features of the city, topography, waterways, etc., the biological resources, the water resources, your natural resources in terms of minerals, and air quality. So what are some of the changes to this chapter? There's a much richer discussion of the city's natural setting, topography, waterways, habitats, sensitive species, and whatnot. Secondly, there's strong policy guidance on preserving open space, conserving habitat, and enhancing wildlife corridors and watershed management. Now, we recognize that the city is not solely or even the lead agency in charge of achieving these objectives, but it's really working with your partners, your water agencies, that are already undertaking this. And then finally, very strong policies for improving air quality via whether it's alternative fuels, green infrastructure, reduction of indirect source pollution, alternative transit, etc. So we're getting close to the end here. The cultural resources chapter is next, and the purpose of this chapter is to recognize, affirm, and enhance the city's rich heritage and cultural resources. And the chapter includes 4 topics: historic resources, paleontological resources, archaeological resources, and cultural resources. Significant changes to this chapter include a recognition and a rich description of the city's history, historic structures and monuments, art, cultural landscapes, urban traces, oral history, and culture. It's quite a bit in that paragraph, but your prior general plan looked at only those structures that fit the state or federal classification for what's historic and worthy of preservation. But when you really look deeper at the city, there's quite a bit more. There's a history that comes with it. Many of your structures and streets all have names and histories to them that speak volumes to the history of the city, but really were not recognized in the prior general plan cultural, and actually the old title was archaeological and historic resources element. Now it's broader cultural resources. And so we do have strong policy guidance for establishing a cultural resources program, as well as new policy guidelines for amplifying and growing the city's kind of burgeoning creative arts scene, including performing arts, visual arts, and other artistic expressions. And finally, health and environmental justice. This comes on the heels of the adoption by the state legislature of Senate Bill 1000 that requires environmental justice. And the purpose is to create and sustain a clean and healthful environment for residents for all neighborhoods. And the topics that this chapter discusses includes reduction in exposure to pollution, adequate public facilities and services, diverse supply of affordable and high-quality housing, opportunities for healthy food, physical activity, and sustained community engagement and involvement. This element is entirely new. There's nothing like it that was in the earlier general plan. So some of the significant changes that you'll see in this element are things that are elevated. It elevates the importance of health and well-being of residents as a critical issue for residents. And to some extent, it mirrors what's been happening in your healthcare sector, with whether it's opening up new hospitals, whether it's opening up new clinics, just new organizations that promote health. And it also provides guidance for how to improve the health of the community, expanding parks, bicycle routes, and trails, supporting and expanding healthcare, expanding access to healthier foods, reducing exposure to pollution, and also equalizing access to your public facilities and your services. And then finally, for public safety, it outlines the city's natural and human-caused hazards and a plan for effective response. This element was also significantly updated. There's been a lot of new legislation on wildfire, new legislation when it comes to evacuation and emergency response, and other types of hazards. And so this was a very significant update. But it includes a discussion and description of the natural hazards, fire, flood, weather-related, human-caused hazards, as well as emergency planning and evacuation and response. Some of the significant changes, very strong policies for wildfire threats that are required by the state. Right now, the state, CAL FIRE is reviewing the city's new safety element for compliance. I think we're going to get it in compliance, so that should be welcomed. Also, it responds to changes in the natural hazard patterns and updated guidance on emergency response. And finally, the last chapter of the general plan is the implementation. And under a separate cover, the 2050 general plan will have approximately 250 programs. We know that many of them are already being worked on. They're state mandates, but there are also many new programs that should be pursued as funding is available and as staff resources are available to implement the general plan. Now the implementation plan, it does not take the place of the 5-year capital improvement plan. That's still a separate capital improvement plan. And all of the master plans that you also prepare, whether it's your water system master plan, whether it's drainage master plan, those have all their capital improvements as well. This is just kind of layered on top of that. So now moving to the environmental clearance process, CEQA. The purpose of that is to disclose project impacts to the public and decision makers and identify ways to avoid or reduce environmental impacts. The EIR will cover 3 documents. It'll cover the general plan, the downtown specific plan, and the development code simultaneously. EIR topics will be the standard topics that you always see for all of your projects. This is the process. I'm not going to go through each of the details. I'm sure you're aware of all of these details. There are a number of steps that are involved. It's all legislatively defined timeframes that we're currently in the process of doing. And we're preparing the final EIR. So we're midway through the process. And so how do we get to the finish line here? Well, tonight we have our study session. We're going to have another study session in May before the City Council. The public review general plan update will be posted again on the general plan website. Right now, the version that's posted is as of December of 2025. You'll see a new one being posted at the end of the month. Give a day or two. It's going to be at the end of May. That will be the one that kind of commences the public review process. And at that same time, the environmental document will be released as well for public review. So whenever those two are going to go together, and so if the environmental document takes another couple days, we'll make sure that it all goes together. The final EIR will be complete in September 26, 2026, and then public hearings before the Planning Commission. You'll see this again, and the City Council will follow in October, November, however long they should last. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm open for any questions that you might have. Questions, comments, thoughts?
I have a question.
Mr. Hoffman, thank you. Commissioner Benjamin, you have questions? Sorry.
Does completion of the EIR also mean approval from the state? Does that mean it's just a finalized document?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, we may receive comments from third parties, we probably will, but they're not going to, it's not like the housing element or the safety element where it goes to a different agency and then they have to sign off on it.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr.
I have a couple questions, actually. I've seen quite a few of these. I've been through a few of these. I've been around here a long time. What is this costing the city to prepare all this information? Is there a price on it?
Yes, there is.
Commissioner Quill, as you may recall, this whole process started back in about 2022 or thereabouts, when we received a $3 million stipend from the state.
Okay.
It started with that, and then we had a couple of PLHA funds, and in total, I think at this particular time, now don't get staggered by the price I'm going to give you, but just realize that it's the general plan, it's a zoning code, it's a zoning map, it's a downtown specific plan. So all these things are combined, and right now we're on the kind of a $4.5 million range.
How much?
4.5 million.
Okay. I didn't hear anything in the plan with reference to marketing our city. Is that supposed to be in this plan?
Yes. Now, in each of the chapters of the general plan, there are, and I'm trying to think of the sections that have marketing. In the economic development chapter, there's quite a bit of marketing about the city.
Okay. And who does this marketing? Is there a redevelopment agency?
No, it would come from city staff, a department that would be assigned to do that.
Okay. So that's called out in the plan, and that will be
Yes.
implemented then?
Yes. Now, what we can also do is we can also go back and take a look at the implementation plan, which essentially are the programs, the to-do list, and make sure that there is a strong focus on marketing. That's something that we definitely can do. We do have it in the general plan already, but it sounds like to me that you're looking for something very substantial.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that we are lacking that in our community, and I think some sort of marketing element would be real beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hoffman, my questions are related to coordination among the general plan, the development code, and the downtown specific plan. When are those plans or code and municipal codes, when are those going to be released or updated, or how are we tracking amendments to these plans?
Well, let's see. We'll start with the not the development code, the downtown specific plan. So that will be updated at the same time. It will go to public hearing at the same time as the EIR and the general plan. So once that EIR is released for public review, it'll come in a package, and it will be the downtown specific plan, the general plan, and the EIR. Now, the development code is still getting worked out. It may not be, it's unclear whether we'll have that at the exact same time that the environmental EIR is released, but that will be coming shortly as well. The intent is when this finally goes to council, Planning Commission, City Council, in the public review stage, all three will be ready to go at that point. So in terms of the time frame, I believe your public hearings are going to be in October and November. All the documents will be available at that time.
I guess my question is, how are we coordinating and tracking amendments? The other question that I had is this general plan going to have some sort of standards, like max heights? Is that all going to be updated? Specifically our downtown, like what's the maximum skyscraper height? How are we
Yes.
coordinating, again, all these plans? Are there different leads, or are you the main point of contact for the general
Commissioner
plan?
Garcia, if I may answer that question. So as far as tracking updates to the general plan, that is something that we would do at a staff level. Now, if your question is, our last general plan update was 2005. If your question is, how many updates have we had to that general plan up to now, we can provide you with that information. So with this new general plan, we're starting kind of all over again. So which means any updates to this general plan, we don't anticipate having anytime soon after the adoption, because this is an exercise for which we should have been able to kind of look at some of those problematic land uses and kind of incorporate them. But that doesn't prevent a third party for wanting to do something totally different, and then they would apply for a general plan amendment and a zone change. And it's really up to staff and the Planning Commission to make a determination as to whether or not they want to entertain that. Under state law, we're allowed 4 amendments a year, but we can combine several amendments into one amendment. But we can't do more than 4 in each calendar year. So that answers the question. Regarding the coordination between land use and the general plan, I just want to clarify what Mark mentioned earlier. We are currently working on a land use table as we speak, because so we are making sure that all the concerns, issues, kind of some of those ancillary land uses for which we don't have a category for, or we don't have a process for, we're making sure that we're documenting them and we're making those updates and changes to the land use plan as well, and also to the land use map. So by the time this goes to hearing, we would have the zoning code, which is a development code, which is the land use, which includes a land use table. We would have the land use map. We would have the general plan map, which you have just seen, and we would have the downtown specific plan. So 2 documents have those standards you were talking about. The development code would have standards for height, setback, lot coverage, et cetera, just like it is now. And then specifically, the downtown specific plan would have its own specific standards for, lot coverage, setbacks, heights, and so on and so forth in the core downtown area. So that's how these documents would be set up.
And just for clarification, so who's taking the lead on each of these? Is that Mr. Mark Hoffman, or I guess I'm interested in what teams are working together to coordinate this?
So Mr. Hoffman and his firm are the consultants to the city on the process. Once the general plan updates and all the documents is basically approved hopefully by the end of this year, then their function would be over unless there are things that were left behind that they need to kind of close the loop on. Then it becomes a document of the city, it becomes a document of the Planning Commission, and we take the document and we work with it going forward.
And then another thing that I had a question on is, are there any guidelines, procedures, standard operating procedures that are going to be part of this plan? And are plans going to be readily available? I know we've gone over the Elements Housing Plan, the TOD, communication towers, and basically maps of all the environmental, truck routes we've spoken in the past. about. So I'm just curious to know, are those all going to be somehow incorporated into these plans or readily available once they're approved as final?
Commissioner Garcia, I'm sorry, Vice Chair Garcia, in each element of the general plan, let's take the circulation element, for example. So any kind of plans related to transportation, policies, goals, et cetera, would be included in that circulation element. In the land use element, same thing. Maps, zoning districts, land use tables, building standards, parking requirements would be included in the land use element. You take air quality, same thing. So anything related to each particular element of the general plan will have its own individual maps and plans and standards and policies and goals. Now, bear in mind that a general plan document is a master plan document. It sets the table. It provides guidelines. The zoning code, the development standards, the development code is the actual nuts and bolts of the land use element of a general plan. That is where all the nuances, building heights, policies, planning commission responsibilities, and how you approve and disapprove projects, et cetera, would be included in that, including your planning commission handbook. So that is how this document is going to be set up.
Just my last question, unless commissioners have any other questions. Can you, Mr. Hoffman, or staff, can you guys elaborate on, I know we went from 4 commercial zoning categories, what the advantage or disadvantage was from going from 4 commercial zones to just 1. Can we talk more about that?
Mark?
Sure. In talking with staff, what we found is that many of the different commercial districts, the uses were very similar. There wasn't a lot of, a great level of differentiation between many of the commercial districts, and so it called into the question, why have CG1 and CG2, or when the permitted uses were fairly close. And so the thought was that rather than have a general plan land use designation for each individual nuanced change, just have a general commercial classification, and then you still have, so you can simplify that and then also simplify the zones. It doesn't mean that you're really discouraging commercial per se, because commercial is going to go where it's going to go. And I don't think anybody wants to really impede that unless it's inconsistent with the surrounding territory. But it just seemed as that because of the allowed uses were so similar that it didn't make sense to have as many categories and to keep it as simple as possible.
My question is it October, November is the timeline for the city council finalizing? Once the new general plan begins implementation, will none of that implementation will be retroactive on any projects that pulled, or will it be retroactive to projects that are currently in the permitting process?
So, if we have projects that are currently that we are currently working on that were submitted under the old general plan, for example, I think we're going to continue to process those. One of the goals of this exercise is to try as much as possible to not make any of the existing land uses legal non-conforming. We don't want to create additional problems than they currently are. So we've tried as much as possible to make sure that we're able to balance some of the existing land uses. Now, beginning this year, we have told applicants that we are anticipating adoption of a new general plan and a new zoning code and development projects going forward, even though we don't have the general plan adopted yet. Those are the guidelines that we would have to follow so that we don't continue to foster submittal of applications under the old general plan. And quite frankly, the 2005 plan and the 2050 plan, most of the land uses, most of the assumptions are relatively the same, but there's a lot of updates to them. And so as we encounter any kind of problematic, we've been doing this at this location for so many years, you're going to change the zoning, we look at those kinds of situations and see, do we want to retain the old zoning, or do we want to provide a new classification to it, or how do we want to proceed going forward? So that's how we've been able to manage that.
I have one more, if you don't mind, Vice Chair. This is probably kind of a minor part of the general plan, but it just piqued my interest when we talked on, when you spoke about conservation and, us not being the lead agency. Am I correct to assume that the lead agency is just whoever owns the land? I mean, if it's BLM land, we would coordinate with BLM not to be in any violation. And all of that coordination would probably take place before it ever got to this body, correct?
It's already probably occurring, yes. So, for example, there are quite a few water management projects that are occurring that are done through your regional water providers. They're done through, for example, all the work that's been done with the Sterling Natural Resource Center, moving the recycled water out to Highland where it goes into the drainage areas there because they're doing restoration work. It's not per se under MWD might have some responsibility, San Bernardino Municipal Water District, but in terms of the Planning Commission here, probably not.
Probably not. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Sorry, just one last question. I know you mentioned Cal State Fire is reviewing the fire hazards.
Cal Fire.
Or Cal Fire, I'm sorry. Can you give just a more elaboration on when we can expect that, or if you can just kind of summarize where they stand on the review or updates?
Sure. In terms of the CAL FIRE review, we received notification from them early this week. They're good with the element. They do want one change, and that's to have more support of some of the fire reduction policies that are in the foothills. Like they have, policies for, clearance and fire, like vegetation clearance types of policies. I believe that's their question. And so we have a policy that we included, and they said with that one policy that could be included, they think it's going to be approved. So far, so good.
All right, thank you. No further questions. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 5, which is the discussion of the Planning Commission Academy.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm here today to help lead our Planning Commission Academy. This is going to be a short refresher on various topics that are relevant to your work as a planning commissioner. And rather than doing boring gold presentation, we're going to do Jeopardy. So each of you will be on your own team, and we'll go through, I'll read off the categories, and then each of you will get an opportunity to select a category at an amount. I'll read out the answer, you'll give me the question, and you'll get the points. If you're not able to, one second. Okay. If you're not able to answer the question, I'll give you 30 seconds, and then I'll open it up to the other commissioners who can steal those points. Whoever has the most points at the end will win, and you'll get the bragging rights for the rest of the year. Absolutely. As you should. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so we will start with Vice Chair Garcia. Let me say it. The categories are public meetings, public participation, public integrity, planning, and miscellaneous topics.
I'll go with public meetings 100.
Okay. This law requires that all meetings shall be open and public unless authorized otherwise. In the form of a question, please. That is incorrect. Yes. Correct. 100 points for you. And I will try to keep track of the points as best I can. Oh, yes, please. Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right.
So Pratt gets to pick.
Yep. Commissioner Pratt, you're next.
Public integrity for 100.
All right. This form is required from filers when assuming office and annually thereafter and upon leaving office.
What is Form 700?
Correct. And I'll just give a little brief statement. So the Form 700 is just a statement of the economic interest that each elected official or public employee must complete. It just ensures transparency and accountability by giving the public the information regarding your financial interests to ensure that you're making proper decisions. And it also helps remind you about the conflicts of interest. Next. Commissioner Quill.
And I'll take miscellaneous for 200.
All right. The Planning Commission may initiate this type of hearing to reevaluate previously approved entitlements if all of the findings cannot be made anymore, typically because of unintended impacts to the community or noncompliance with conditions of approval.
Would it be a public meeting?
That is incorrect. Other commissioners?
Do we lose points if we guess wrong?
Not this time. No? The correct answer is, what is a revocation hearing? Next one. Chair Garcia, Vice Chair Garcia.
I'll take planning 100.
All right. This specifies what kind of development should go where and details the standards that developments need to adhere by, including density, heights, and parking.
Land use and zoning,
In the form of a question, please.
which would be considered a land use.
What is?
What is,
land use.
continue. What is land use?
In planning
You said it the first time.
and zoning.
There we go. Correct answer is, what is zoning? All right. Commissioner Pratt?
Public participation for 400.
All right. Filming or live streaming during a planning commission meeting is generally allowed by this law.
What is the Brown Act?
Correct.
Yeah.
So as you know, the Brown Act does allow recording of meetings so long as it's not disruptive to the procedure of the meeting. And there was a recent law that passed that actually updated this rule and allows you to record using your phone, camera, video. Prior to this law passing, you could only use audio visual recorders. So a little update there. All right, Commissioner Quill?
Public meeting for 200.
Any congregation of a majority of the members of a legislative body at the same time and location, including teleconference location as permitted by Government Code Section 54953, to hear, discuss, deliberate, or take action on any item that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body.
What is a quorum?
That's incorrect. That is also incorrect.
A meeting? What is a meeting?
Correct. So meetings are covered under the Brown Act, and it's important to note just how broadly the meetings are defined. And this is just to ensure that members and legislative bodies have their conversations in public and they're not done in secret.
I was just going to say Brown Act again.
Close. Who was next? I just forgot. I think it's Vice Chair Garcia.
I'll do public participation 100.
This item on the agenda provides the public the ability to address the Planning Commission on any matter within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. Correct. Commissioner Pratt?
Public meetings for 300.
This person may have an individual removed for disturbing a meeting of the body after being warned that their behavior is disruptive.
Who is the Sergeant of Arms?
Could you repeat that?
Who is the Sergeant of Arms? Who is the Sergeant at Arms?
I want to allow it, but technically that's the incorrect answer. I'll accept that. The specific response was who is the presiding member of the legislative body, but that would be the chair in this instance, so that's correct. Commissioner Quill?
Miscellaneous for 100.
Common blank include limited hours of operation, road improvements, soundproofing, additional landscaping, and additional parking.
What is planning?
That is incorrect. Yes.
What are ordinances?
That is also incorrect.
Just common law? I'm not sure.
So the correct answer is, what are conditions of approval? All right. Vice Chair Garcia.
I'll take planning 200.
For general plan adoption or amendments, the state planning and zoning law requires that the Planning Commission provide this.
Which is conditions of approval.
That is incorrect.
Land use.
That is also incorrect. Okay. The correct answer was, what is a recommendation? Commissioner Pratt?
Public integrity 300.
When an official's property boundary is within the radius of the property subject of a decision, the official may not participate unless there is clear and convincing evidence that the decision will not have any measurable impact on the official's property.
Is there a question in it? I'm trying to see.
This radius.
Say again?
When an official's property boundary is within this radius.
Got it. What is 500 yards?
Very close.
Which is 500 feet.
Correct. So this is actually part of the Political Reform Act. If you're outside of the 500-foot mark, you should still consider some other factors to determine if you should recuse yourself. And this would include potential for development, potential for income production, and additional use of your property. If you're within the 500-foot, it's also recommended that you receive written advice from the FPPC to allow participation. And there's also a catch-all provision of the Political Reform Act where if a reasonably prudent person might believe that the decision it has a foreseeable effect to influence your property value, that you should also recuse yourself. So just keep those in mind. Commissioner Quill. This law prohibits a public official at any level of state or local government from making, participating in making, or attempting to use the official's position to influence a governmental decision in which the official knows or has reason to know the official has a financial interest.
What is conflict of interest?
That's incorrect.
What is FPPC?
That's also incorrect. Yeah, you're getting close. Any other guesses?
Can I get 150 points?
The correct answer is the Political Reform Act. This also is known as Prop 9. It's just a set of laws that govern ethics, campaign, finance, conflict of interest. And fun fact, this actually was created in addition to the FPPC, which was created right after Watergate. So both of these came as a reason of Watergate. So without that, we might not have this.
So the FPPC is divided into forces, the Political Reform Act. And the Political Reform Act, to your question, is one source of conflict of interest law. So the Political Reform Act are all conflicts, the largest umbrella. Then you have a second bucket called Government Code 1090, which are related to conflicts in contracts specifically. And then you have the third bucket, which predates all the statutes, which is the common law, which is information law. And so you have what's called the common law conflict of interest doctrine, which gets at predominantly the appearance of impropriety, the appearance of conflict of interest. So the pro tip for all of you is if you think you have a conflict, all these things are very, very fact intensive. Reach out to staff and release as early as possible. This is if you think you might have a conflict, because they're so fact intensive, we can't give you good advice unless we have some time to research it. And so review the agenda in advance, identify if you think you might have a conflict, and then reach out to them so they have some time to give you some good advice.
And if there's no time, probably just recuse out of safety, right?
As a prophylactic, that's probably good.
I'll split that one with you.
Just to interrupt, just to turn on your mics when providing your answers or speaking at all.
Sorry.
All right. Next is Vice Chair Garcia.
I'll take public participation for 200.
This type of speech is not protected during public comment.
The non-public hearing?
Incorrect. Yes.
What is hate speech?
I will accept that. No?
Come on, man.
Incorrect. The answer is, what are threats of violence against persons?
So, hate speech, the Supreme Court has said is protected by the First Amendment.
Okay.
So racist speech, xenophobic speech, sexist speech, white nationalist speech, all that is protected by the First Amendment. Where it becomes illegal is if it involves a threat. So it's the difference between saying, I don't like you because you're a black person, versus, I don't like you because you're a black person, and I'm gonna walk you out to your car and come back to this meeting again. The first one is protected by the First Amendment, the second one is not, because it involves a threat.
I mean, threats are implied in hate speech, though, I think, aren't they?
The law does not recognize it that way, so simply saying racist things is protected by the First Amendment. You cannot shut it down, you cannot reduce their time, you cannot shut off the mic, you have to hear it.
Excuse me.
All right, Commissioner Pratt, you're up.
Hold on, I'm dying. How about public participation for 300?
This law, effective January 1st, 2026, and partially on July 1st, 2026, requires eligible legislative bodies to provide two-way teleconferencing, allow remote participation, and potentially translate agendas.
I don't know.
Okay. Any other commissioners? No? So this one is, what is SB707? So this just passed late 2025, but it went into effect as of January 1st for most of the provisions. And this just corrected and revised various sections of the Brown Act, but it also included these new regulations and rules regarding requiring two-way audio-visual or two-way telephonic service. Now, given that the commission does not qualify as a eligible legislative body, that particular provision would not apply to you. It would apply to the city council and to other larger special districts. Commissioner Quill?
Planning for 300.
By this phase, a development has secured all the needed local government approvals, also known as entitlements.
What is planning approval?
That's incorrect.
CUP?
That's also incorrect. The correct answer is, what is the building phase? So by this point, you've already gone through getting the permits, the allowances, you've done the budget, the financing, all the pre-construction, and now you're at this point where you're finally getting to actually build. All right, Vice Chair Garcia. These type of hearings focus on applying existing ordinances to particular facts, such as zoning variances or license revocations, requiring impartial decision-making. Any other commissioners?
What is public hearing?
That's incorrect.
Oh.
Anyone else? The correct answer is, what is a quasi-judicial hearing? So this is different from a judicial hearing just because a judicial hearing would involve a court or a judge. What the commission does is the commission holds these quasi-judicial hearings, which involve both considering the existing laws and ordinances and regulations and applying them to a set of specific facts and then making a decision. So it's judicial in the fact that you're taking law and you're taking facts and you're looking at them and giving some sort of outcome, which is similar to what a judge would do in court. But it's just quasi because we're not in a courtroom.
So what you normally have is you normally have legislative decisions. Like when the general plan is going to come to you, that's a legislative decision. You're looking at a law, proposed new law, or an amendment to a law, that's going to affect everybody, or a large group of people generally. Quasi-judicial hearing, like you remember the revocation hearing that you guys did on the Motel 6 at the university? That was a quasi-judicial hearing. We were looking at specific facts presented by staff coming from their investigation, like going to the site, talking, doing their investigation. And then you were looking at the code and looking at what specific findings qualify to revoke that CUP holder's CUP and see if it matches up. Are there enough facts to meet one of these findings to revoke the CUP? So that's an example of a quasi-judicial hearing that we recently did.
We'll go on to our next one. Everyone, I think you're next, yeah.
Public integrity 400.
There are instances where there is no conflict of interest violation under the Political Reform Act or of the Government Code Section 1090, but still potentially a conflict under this other source of law.
Not sure.
Any other commissioners?
Remember the 3 buckets? This is the third bucket. SBPC?
No, but close. Okay. The correct answer is, what is the common law conflict of interest? So it was that third bucket that we talked about. These are going to be based in court decisions from judges or appellate decisions. And most commonly, there's going to be a conflict that applies even if there's just the appearance of impropriety. It doesn't have to involve financial interests. It can involve personal matters or relationships. So a recent example is that the Attorney General concluded that the adult child of a commissioner, for instance, could apply for a permit, but the commissioner should recuse themselves just because of the appearance of impropriety and that personal relationship. So even if you have nothing to do with their permit or their business or anything, just the fact that you're related to that person, you have a close relationship to that person, the common law would find that there be a conflict of interest there.
What if you have a relationship to where you're, for instance, on a board with an individual, or not related, but associated with an individual in some business, but you don't have business together? So, I mean, if you know the person, is it common law? I mean, interest?
It's gonna depend on the appearance of impropriety. So if you have no relation to that person, you don't know them at all, you don't talk to them, they're literally just another person that's on the same board as you, that's probably less likely to be a conflict of interest as compared to, this is someone that I'm friends with, we're on a board together, but I'm not involved in their business. That could still show an impropriety and present a potential conflict. Yeah. All right. Who's next? Commissioner Quill, I think you're next.
Commissioner Quill, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Planning for 400.
This kind of plan can be considered a super zoning ordinance that can dictate architectural styles, landscaping requirements, parking requirements, etc. We just talked about these.
That's why it's driving me crazy.
Trying to recap that.
Ivan's using Google.
Yeah. I'm going to have to skip on that one. I know that there's an answer because we just talked about it, but.
Any other commissioners? Incorrect. Anyone else? The correct answer is
Civic plan?
yes. There we go.
Good job.
Snuck it in there.
All right. Vice Chair Garcia.
I'll take miscellaneous 400.
AB 2904, effective January 1st, 2025, requires cities to provide at least this number of days notice on any zoning ordinance that affects the permitted uses of real property. This is an increase from the previous requirement of 10 days.
Sorry, just to interrupt again. If I could just have you turn your mic on.
Is it a 30-day notice?
That's incorrect. Yes.
What is 90 days?
That's also incorrect.
What is 60 days?
That's also incorrect.
45?
That's also incorrect. The correct answer is 20 days.
We almost got it.
So close. Commissioner Pratt?
All right, I'm going for the daily double. Public meetings, 500.
These type of conversations do not violate the Brown Act if done in person, by email, or by text message, but they may violate the Brown Act if done on social media.
I don't know.
Any other commissioners?
What is a public meeting?
That's incorrect.
Speaker? No.
Anyone else? The answer is, what are one-on-one conversations? So the reason why these don't violate the Brown Act if they're done in person, by email, or by text is because it's literally just one-on-one. It's just you two individuals having a conversation. When you're on social media, the issue that arises is that you don't know who else is involved in those conversations. So for instance, if Commissioner A and Commissioner B are talking in a Facebook group about a topic that may be related to the commission, and then Commissioner C and D are also in that same group talking about the same matter, even though they're both having one-on-one conversations with each other, that could constitute a serial meeting. So you want to be mindful, especially on social media, to avoid serial meetings.
Let me also add a little bit of color to that. So the law says that they apply to pages that are open and accessible to the public. So basically think about social media interaction the whole world can see. So Facebook, but on your public page, not a private message. Instagram, on a post that everyone can see, not a direct message on Instagram. The law says that if you make a Facebook post and either of you like it, comment on it, share it, that's a violation. Okay. But I want to empower you with the knowledge that, say the city has a Facebook account and they let's say there's a new park that maybe you did, or some kind of new mural they put out in the park, and you want to share that to your Facebook. You can do that. All of you can share that city Facebook post to your own social media, and that would not violate the law. It's perfectly fine. Where the violation would be is, let's say you reshared it from the city's Facebook page, and then you two are friends and you saw it. And instead of you going back to the city's Facebook post and sharing that just like he did, you reshare his post. You resharing his post violates the law. But instead of that, go to the city's page and just like he did, reshare from the city's page. Okay, so that's one way you can get out information and there's not going to be any violation.
What if I took it from the city and I commented on it? Would that still be?
That's fine.
Okay.
That's perfectly fine. The reason that the legislature amended the law to regulate social media is because they wanted to do two things. One, they wanted to encourage more communication with your constituents outside of the meetings. So you making a post and saying, hey, the city just finished this mural project at the park, what do you think? Comment below. Perfectly fine. That's what the law intended. They wanted to encourage that kind of interaction. The second thing is they wanted to encourage participation by people that typically could not come to a meeting, like a young single mom who has to be with their kids at 6 p.m. not here at the planning commission meeting, or like an elderly person who's homebound now. They can interact with their appointed and elected representatives on social media, not come to a meeting. And so those are the two reasons they amended that law.
Quill.
Okay, let's try planning for 500.
In the context of a conditional use permit, this number of findings is needed. This number of findings need to be affirmatively shown in the negative, meaning not met, in order to justify denying the project.
What is one?
Correct. 500 points for you.
I'll go for the big points.
There you go. Sandbagging us.
All right. Vice Chair Garcia.
I'll take miscellaneous 500.
To deny this type of project, a local agency must adopt written findings based on substantial evidence that the project, 1, has specific adverse impact on public health or safety with no feasible method to mitigate it, 2, is contrary to state or federal law, or 3, for concessions, does not actually reduce costs.
Which would be a finding fact.
That's incorrect. This is a type of project.
Commercial project.
Incorrect.
A public project?
Also incorrect. So the correct answer is a density bonus law project. So these are under Government Code 65915. These would allow developers to increase the project density beyond what is included in the general plan, so like beyond 50% or more, in exchange for including affordable or senior housing units. So essentially you get to exceed this density, but then you also get an incentive, but then you have to have these affordable or senior units, but then you also get these incentives for doing so. So it might be parking reductions or some other incentive, and the incentives will depend on the amount of affordability. Will depend on how many affordable units you have. All right, Commissioner Pratt.
Public meetings for 400.
These type of meetings are prohibited under the Brown Act.
Meetings of more than 2? That's hard to...
That's incorrect. We kind of just recently talked about an example of them.
Social media meetings, out recently.
That's incorrect, but it was in relation to that item. Any other commissioners? No.
Meeting with more than 3 persons?
That's also incorrect. You all are close.
What is a meeting more than one-on-one?
Incorrect.
What is a special?
Private?
Special meeting?
That's incorrect.
What are private meetings?
Also incorrect.
Oh, damn it.
So the correct answer is, what is a serial meeting?
Oh, that's right.
So you were all so close. But a serial meeting is a meeting that is not properly noticed or an unauthorized meeting. So this can happen on social media, how Albert mentioned, where people are commenting or reposting the same posts from each other. This can also happen in a way which they call a daisy chain. So let's say that Commissioner A talks with Commissioner B about what decision they want to make on an item that's coming up in a meeting. And then Commissioner B talks to Commissioner C and has the same conversation, and it just continues until you've had a majority of the commissioners discuss the same item. This can also happen in what they call a hub and spoke, which is where either one commissioner or even a staff member talks to each commissioner one-on-one, and they share, okay, well, I talked to Commissioner A, B, and C, and they're going to do this. And you have one person that's in the center telling everybody what each other is going to say. That would also count as a serial meeting. All of those are prohibited under the Brown Act.
No, I was just thinking out loud, just relaying of information like that.
All right, our last two. Commissioner Quill?
Public participation 500.
This type of behavior is allowed even if it offends, as long as it does not prevent the legislative body from accomplishing its business in a reasonably efficient manner.
What is bad behavior?
That is incorrect. Yes.
Back to hate speech.
Closer, but also incorrect. Vice Chair?
I would say just loud talking. Yelling.
That's also incorrect. The correct answer is First Amendment protected speech. So you're allowed to speak up and you're allowed to provide public comment, just so long as it's not disruptive to the meeting. But this would also include someone wanting to bring a sign, as long as their sign is not in violation of the city's sign regulations. So for some cities, you can't have it on a stick or you can't have it on like a bulletin board. But if someone brought, a piece of paper and had a sign on it, as long as they're not running through the meeting and being disruptive, that would be allowed under the First Amendment. All right, our last question.
Public integrity 500.
The Fair Political Practice Commission, also known as the FPPC, has set this amount as the gift limit for 2026.
Which is 1,000.
That's incorrect. Yes?
$5,900. What is $5,900?
You said 5,900?
Yeah.
That's also incorrect.
What is 500?
That's also incorrect.
Which is 50.
That's also incorrect.
$1 million.
The correct answer is, what is $630?
They come up with that.
$630.
It's very specific, I know. But this is, it's an increase from prior years, and this is just so the FPPC prohibits state and local officials from accepting gifts that total $630 or more in 1 year. So that's the $630 limit. Yes, or from one party. And if you violate this, there is up to a $5,000 penalty. So please be mindful of that.
To the person that accepts the gift.
Yes. Okay, those are all our questions. Albert, who won?
So, here are our top three. Coming in third place, Commissioner Quill with 500 points.
Right.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Coming in second place, Vice Chair Ivan Garcia with 800 points. And our winner to be marketed Congratulations. Will be Commissioner Benjamin Pratt with 1,200 points.
All right, cool. Thanks. I'm going to frame that next agenda, man.
At least the questions if you have. I just wanted to add two things. One, I heard a lot of public meeting and public hearing being thrown out from a lot of you. I want to explain that difference to you. So, a public meeting is when a quorum of the body, so the body is 9. 5 of you are needed for quorum. So like even tonight, you didn't have technically a meeting under the ground. You need 5 quorum, and you count vacancies. So imagine out of the 9, 4 seats were vacant, and there were only 5 planning commissioners. You would still need 5 planning commissioners to show up to have a meeting, because you count vacancies for determining a quorum. So a public meeting is when you have 5 out of 9, and you have a notice meeting. There's an agenda that's been noticed, open to the public, etc. What makes it a public hearing is the additional notice that happens. So all public hearings happen at public meetings, but not all public meetings have public hearings. Public hearing is, let's say, it's a land use decision, like let's say a conditional use permit for a car wash, let's say. Okay. The code requires that it be noticed to all property owners within 1,000 feet of the proposed car wash. So that's what makes it a public hearing. And you have to go through special public hearing procedures here. And you have to have individual public comment. You can't just take general public comment at the beginning of the meeting for that, like you could say for the consent calendar. You have to have take specific public comment for that public hearing. And typically there'll be an applicant, you'll hear from the applicant, you'll hear from public comment. The applicant might have an opportunity to rebut the public comment given. So those are some nuances for a public hearing that's different than just a public meeting. And the other thing is, I don't want you to be discouraged, if you felt like you got a lot of things wrong or you didn't know the answer to them. That's the point of this, right? The point of this is to learn. We wouldn't be doing our job if we went through this whole exercise and you knew every answer. So we want to try and teach you something. So I don't want you to be discouraged by that. I think that'll be great. And if you have any general questions for Elise, please know.
Can it
The
ask?
same question as last time, were they?
I'm sorry?
These were different questions.
They're different, yes.
Yeah. I had the other ones memorized.
I knew that was worse.
Yes, Commissioner Pratt.
Can an applicant request a continuance, like say if we just have quorum, if we have 5, but there are our commissioners absent, can they request to be heard by the entire body?
So if you have a quorum, but there's 4 commissioners missing, can the applicant request a continuance until all the commissioners are there?
Yeah. Or better question, could we? Because I'm asking because we had a situation recently where we had a whole different group of commissioners on a ratification than were there, for the vote to deny a project. So, I mean, is it advisable for us if we're barely at quorum to continue something until we're all here?
I would say you can have it during that meeting, even though you don't have, over 5 people present. The issue is that the applicant has to have due process, right? So you have to make sure that the applicant is informed of the public hearing, make sure that they know when it's going to happen so that they can attend and speak on their behalf. So if you have it on the agenda for, let's say today, and then we only had 5 out of 9 show up, but we do have quorum, and then you tell them, okay, we're actually going to push it to another date, that could cause some issues there for the applicant.
But can we be violating, I mean, I don't know, but could it be construed as a violation of their due process if 5 of us approved a process and then for ratification, 9 of us denied that same project?
Well, so, and I know what you're talking about from our last 2 meetings. So the commission had already approved an item, right? So then when we come back that second time and we're looking at the resolution, we're not changing the decision on the project. We're only saying whether or not we're going to approve that resolution. So there's not an issue there regarding, okay, we approved it and now we're denying it. The matter has already been approved. You're denying the resolution and the findings that you had. So that won't change necessarily the decision regarding the item.
So if the resolution hadn't been approved, what would have happened then?
If the resolution had not been approved?
Right. Would it revert back to the commission for another hearing, or would it go up to the council? How would that have gone?
If the resolution to ratify the commission's decision, remind me, was the decision to recommend approval or denial? Was it?
It was denial.
Denial.
The decision was denial. But the resolution came to you for approval. That was staff's recommendation, I guess. So that's why you needed time to, okay. So commission denied the project, came back with a resolution ratifying the decision to deny. If the commission did not approve that resolution ratifying the denial, then you're leaving the city open up to liability, because when you deny a project, denials have to be done in writing. They have to by law. And I remember in this instance for this project, the applicant had already filed an appeal. They had already filed a timely appeal to city council. And staff was not going to process that appeal until the planning commission approved the resolution, because that's what has the denial finding or findings. So that's the basis, for the denial in writing. You got to give the applicant in writing. So if you hadn't approved it, then it would be some risk for the city. They could go to court and say, hey, they denied our project, but they didn't deny it in writing. So technically our project is approved, and they actually would have a reasonable argument. So there would be an open liability if the planning commission did not adopt a resolution to deny the project in writing.
Yeah, I was asking because it seemed at first that thing was going to go the other direction that day. It didn't. I was surprised, but I was wondering what the outcome of that would have been. That's very
So,
informative.
Albert, can you opine on whether or not commissioners who did not participate in the earlier decision to deny can actually influence the outcome of the ratification, for example? So 5 commissioners heard it, they denied it. Now you have 9. Now, can the 4 who did not participate in the original decision now influence the planning commission to change the original decision? I would think that only those who participated in the denial should be able to vote regarding the outcome of the ratification. But in this particular case, we pull the item off for discussion, and all the other commissioners talked about it, but the decision still remained a denial of the application itself. So would that be an instance where I would think that only those commissioners who participated in the denial can actually change their votes, and not the new commissioners who were not a part of the original hearing?
So I would treat it the same way that you treat a continued public hearing. The same way. So you say you had 5 people that they heard the first public hearing, but then it was continued because there was some additional questions and staff or the applicant needed to do additional work on the project. So it's continued to the next meeting. Then at the next meeting, then there's 9. So the 4 people that were in that meeting number 1, can they participate in meeting number 2? It's the same. I would treat it exactly the same, which is, the answer is it depends on if the 4 new ones have reviewed the tape and the agenda package from the prior meeting. If they have reviewed it and they're up to speed on what happened in that meeting, then they can participate. If they are not, if they did not watch the meeting, if they did not read the agenda packet from the last meeting, then I would opine that they cannot participate. And again, it goes back to due process, because the applicant has the right for the decision to be made by someone who has all the information, who's impartial, unbiased. But the first part is that they have all the information. So if the four new ones are not up to speed, they should not participate. Does that answer your question, David?
It does, but in this particular instance, we don't know if the other commissioners had actually viewed the tape of the denial. I'm going to assume that they did.
What I recommend next time is for staff to specifically ask them, did you review the tape from last meeting? Did you review the agenda packet? And if they say yes, then they can participate. And if no, then not. And you can look to at least to kind of explain the legalities of that. But I think, Gabriel, you should ask them that question. Thank you.
So, on the contrary, then, can the original 4 or 5 who participated in the denial change their vote at the ratification?
Well, remember, the vote is different.
Okay.
The vote on meeting number 1 was approve or deny the project.
Was denial. I was only
Number 2, the vote is about something completely different.
ratification.
Right. All the vote is in meeting number 2 is, does this resolution accurately reflect the reasons why the commission denied the project in meeting number 1? And so really, if you are being a principal planning commissioner, even if you have personal objections to the project, if the resolution accurately reflects why your colleagues at the last meeting voted to deny the project, then you should vote yes. Because you're not voting on whether you agree with the project or disagree with the project. You're voting on, does this document accurately reflect why the planning commission denied the project? And remember that the function of that document is the law requires you give the applicant something in writing explaining why their project was denied. So that is the function. And so really, you got to keep the city's interest front of mind when that kind of a thing happens, because even though you might have a disagreement with the project, you're actually doing more harm to the city by kind of following your gut and saying, I don't like this project, so I'm going to vote no. Because if there's not enough votes there and the resolution is not approved, then again, you have this hanging liability that you've created now for the city. And you've allowed the applicant to have an argument to go to court and have a judge actually approve their project because you never denied it in writing. So keep that in mind.
Okay, I have a comment, maybe a question. What I've noticed a few times, and for the couple of years that I've been on here, when the meeting is open and we approve the minutes, there are people approving minutes that weren't at the previous meetings. Now, I think that can reflect a problem too, in the same relationship as far as voting on the revocation of a project or whatever, because they've actually voted voted in favor of the minutes, but they are not really familiar with the minutes. So I think that could be a real issue too sometimes.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
The law says that where you have someone that did not participate in the prior meeting and they're voting on minutes, or they're considering voting on minutes for that prior meeting, if their vote is required to actually approve the minutes, the law says they can vote. Okay? If their vote would not be required to approve the minutes, then they should abstain. And that's something that I think that staff needs to help you all out and keep a track of who attended the meetings and who didn't. Because a lot of those things, Larry, can happen just inadvertently, you don't remember, right?
Right.
And so I think you need staff's help to say, oh, actually, Commissioner so-and-so, you were not at that meeting. And so I think it can resolve itself, but typically, I don't think it's a real big issue Because even the people who voted, it's not like a conflict of interest. You know, it's a simple thing, you weren't at the meeting. It's only really a legal issue if their vote really matters to approve the minutes or not. Most times it doesn't. So most times it's not a major issue, but it is something that it should be, you know, accurate. It should be accurate who was there and who was not.
Well, the situation we had at the last meeting with reference to the McDonald's that was on Baseline and Sierra Way, that applicant met all the requirements, and also staff recommendation was to approve the project. And I was a little confused. We had to come up with a finding to disapprove that. And so once we complete that meeting and we disapproved it, does staff have to come up with findings to present to the applicant why it was disapproved? I mean, if they want to appeal it, they can take it to the city council, but when they take it to the city council, they have to have something from staff or something from the planning commission saying why it was disapproved, correct?
Yes, Commissioner Quell, if you remember, when we bring an item before you with a prescribed recommendation, let's say for approval, and you deny it, we usually ask you to provide the basis for your denial, because that's going to formulate what we're going to put in a resolution for denying it. And it goes vice versa. If we bring a project for you for a denial and you approve it, we're going to ask you to provide us with the basis for your approval. And that is why we usually bring the resolution back at the next meeting, because now we have to go and formulate the findings to be contrary to the findings that we brought to the hearing itself. If you recall, in this particular case, we asked Commissioner Daley if he could provide some bullet points, and he said all the things I've said earlier this evening. So we went back, we watched the tape, and it basically kind of focused on the intent of what a TOD development project is. And that was good enough, and we only have to make one finding to the contrary, and that would basically allow for the project to be denied. So that's what happened.
All right, can we continue to the next item? To Planning Commission reports, announcements. Mr. Quell and Mr. Pratt.
I have no reports.
I have no report.
I just wanted to quickly go over a ribbon cutting we had at Ray Gutierrez Park on Tuesday, 5/5 at 4 p.m. for park improvements. I also wanted to mention that we had the neighborhood speed hump policy workshop for public safety. That was yesterday at 6 p.m. I wasn't able to attend, but I thought that's a huge accolade to our community residents that are concerned about public safety. Economic development, it may not be for this meeting, but I just wanted to know how are businesses informed and notified about available grants? I have a count that we have about 13,000 plus businesses. And I also would want to give an accolade to our economic business development for ribbon cuttings and businesses anniversaries. I see those on social media. Huge kudos to our team there, our staff. And then as far as new business, League of California Cities, they emailed us a planners meeting agenda today. We're supposed to have our May 2026 Planning Commission Community Development Department business meeting tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. For all the planning commissioners, if they're available, hopefully they can jump on that call to hear what's going on in the planning and community development world. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is there's a webinar. It's called the 2026 Bill Briefing, and this ties back into the League of California Cities. And it's named What to Expect in the Second House. Last day to register. If you attended the planning conference, I think you can attend register before 6/2/26. And that's all that I have. Director's report.
Vice Chair Garcia, members of the Planning Commission, I don't have any additional updates for you. I hope you enjoyed the presentation on the general plan update and also on the Jeopardy exercise. Hopefully at the next Planning Commission hearing, we can have the items today that we could not deliberate upon at the next meeting. Thank you.
We'll go ahead and adjourn at, we have 8:04. Thank you, everyone.